This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Mike Sedita.
Hello out there. Welcome to episode 111 of the Good Neighbor Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Sedita, and I am joined today by Dr. Ravi Viradia of Viradia Plastic Surgery here in Wesley Chapel. Doc, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show.
Thank you so much for being on. I mean, I don't know if we're going to air this video or not. You are always dressed so dapper, bow tie and the whole works. You always look like you're so buttoned up. We've met a couple times and hung out. It's good to have you on the Good Neighbor Podcast. I don't know how familiar you are with the Good Neighbor Podcast, so let me give you a brief background on who we are and why we do what we do. The Good Neighbor Podcast was started in 2020 as a way for businesses that are local who needed to be socially distant to get into the community, to tell people who are listening what you do, what your services are, what your specialties are, and kind of generate business that way for local businesses and get charity events out there and things like that. And now flash forward 3 years later, we're out of COVID and the podcast has grown to a national brand. We are a national podcast for a local audience. We're in Denver, we're in Atlanta, Virginia. I'm lucky enough to get to talk to business owners here in the Tampa market. And with that being said, tell us a little bit about Viradia Plastic Surgery.
Yeah, so we just started here in September of this year, and we're so happy to be here to serve the Wesley Chapel and Tampa community. It really all started from the origins, which was West Virginia. It's kind of it's a long route to get to where I am today, but I'm so humbled by it. And so that's where we're coming from originally.
So, all right. So let me ask you this a little bit about the business first.
Right.
Is your specialty, is it across the board? Is it butt lifts, face lifts, tummy tucks, breast augmentation? Is it all of that across the board, or do you have a very special, finite specialty?
Right. So we do cosmetic surgery, which includes all those things you just said.
Okay.
We do focus on the face, the breast, and the body. And so like you talked about, the facelifts, the butt lifts, the tummy tucks, the breast tucks, we do those things. We also have a side that actually caters to the community for the needs as well. So we do breast reconstruction, which is insurance based. We also do,
people who have breast cancer and they need the reconstruction.
Yeah, we take care of the cancer stuff because that's really difficult right now to get around Wesley Chapel. A lot of folks have been having to travel long roads, and that's one thing that we offer that makes us unique. And then I'm also hand trained. And so I do hand surgery as well, which I did a specialty 1-year fellowship for orthopedics. So we take care of carpal tunnel, we take care of wrist fractures and all those things. But, from my aspect, my whole kind of variety of plastic surgery is cosmetic and reconstruction. And the cosmetic side, I do love to do, but the reconstruction side with the hand and the breast is also something I want to help the community out with. It's not going to be something I could do full time because the insurances that I'm trying to get into, I'm having difficulty with, but we're trying to get there. And they can't really help to keep our doors open because the payments are dropping tremendously. And so I'm trying to give the community that service, but also do the cosmetic as well.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you is this. So, I mean, from a business standpoint, I mean, what would you say? 95% of your clientele are the cosmetic side, and there's a small little 5% side that are these reconstructs, right?
Absolutely, like a 5 to 10%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the hardest part with that's what I was going to ask, because you said like it's not something that's readily available here in Wesley Chapel. Is that just because, I mean, the bane of a lot of people's existence, patients and doctors alike, insurance companies just dictate what you can and cannot do? So is it harder for you to get in to do that? And then when you do get in to do it, if that surgery, like just using an apples to apples comparison, okay? And you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm trying to educate so I understand in my language, because you're a doctor and I'm just an idiot who hosts a podcast. So talking about a breast augmentation versus a breast reconstruction, they're both breast enhancement, or, for lack of a better term.
Right.
On the cosmetic side, that surgery, and again, this aren't real numbers, people. I'm just using round numbers. Say that surgery across the board is a $10,000 surgery. Mm-hmm. When you do it on the cosmetic side, you're getting that and the anesthesia and whatever it is to do all that On the insurance side, though, you might only get $2,000 of that because the insurance company says, hey, this is all we're going to allocate, right? Is that kind of the gist of why it's so difficult?
Yeah, the market value for what cosmetic surgeries for the same procedure is much higher than if you did it through insurance.
Gotcha.
And also the insurance side of things also have an aspect of you getting paid at times 60 to 70% of Medicare rates, even for private insurers. So you're getting paid pennies on the dollar. It could even be $600, Mike, to $1,000 for a bilateral reconstruction that includes tissue expanders, and your complications being much higher because these patients are getting chemo, these patients are getting radiation. That causes the skin to get thin. That causes the implant to bust out. You're following these people for months afterwards. All that is included in that price. So you're actually putting in more time, more energy, and you're having complications that are much higher, which increases your liability. It increases the amount of time that the patient's going to have to go through. And then you don't pay for that to pay your nurse or your MA or your lights to be staying on, because you got to pay other people too, not just yourself.
So essentially, I mean, and then on top of that, you probably don't get paid out for 60 or 90 days because insurance drags everything out. So it's cash flow. So essentially, that whole reconstructive side is really like a part of your philanthropy back to the community.
Exactly. It's a tough process, but it's something that I've been trained to do. And I want to give that part back, but I have to use the cosmetic side to help fund it.
Yeah, I mean, it's economics, right? I think anybody listening to this, a business owner understands that. Any business owner understands there's overhead. You have all the different things that you need for operating expense, whether that's rent and staff and marketing and operational expenses and machinery and instruments. Okay. Everybody gets all that. Right. Let me ask you, though, this question. Two, really. So how do you get into this? I mean, have you always, like, when you were a kid, you always wanted to be a doctor. I mean, did you kind of gravitate towards plastic surgery, or was that something that was always an interest to you? Or did you want to be like an orthopedist that fixed bones instead of tissue? How did you get from West Virginia as a young guy to here where you are now in Wesley Chapel?
Yeah, I think the big part of my growth and process was my father is an internal medicine doctor, but also specializes in vein and vascular surgery.
Okay.
And so growing up, I saw him go to the hospitals. He took me on rounds. He took me to his office. I saw the care that he was giving to patients and their feedback of how much they loved him. And I wanted to be just like him, as he was my idol and still is my hero. And then as I grew, I was like, look, I want to be a doctor. I don't know what kind yet, but then surgery was what I really liked. He started doing these minor procedures in his office, got into the veins, had a little med spa. And then I was like, you know what? I like that. I like when I can take care of people and they're happy. You know, I'm making a difference too. And that led me into general surgery. And so I was able to stay in West Virginia, in my own hometown, in our trauma center, and take care of the patients that I grew up around with, their parents. You know, their parents, their kids, we all were friends. It's a local community. It's a small town. And I just loved it so much. But then I loved hand and plastics. And then I just got into the plastic surgery. I got into the reconstruction, the cosmetics, and the hand. And then I focused and did fellowships in hand and plastics from there. And we're here today.
So bad blood joke, but your dad was a vascular surgeon, so this was in your blood since you were early age, right? That's my bad vascularity joke. But
yeah, exactly.
So what is it about the hand? Is it the intricacies of the bones and the tissue because it's so much smaller and it's more of a challenge?
Yeah, I just enjoyed, like, plastics and hand go hand in hand.
You got bad dad jokes too. I got bad vascular jokes. You got bad hand jokes. Okay, we're on the same level now.
Oh yeah, no, but it's a very fine process. You got to have really steady hands. You got to put nerves back together. I love doing those things, and I applied that to my cosmetic surgeries. How precise I have to be, the symmetry, all those things that are necessary for you to be a complete, precise, and safe surgeon is what I've taken from my hand surgery background and brought it to cosmetics and plastics.
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of, I've actually had about six different procedures, plastic surgery wise. Not so much like just more some skin issues because of a rapid weight loss that I had. So for me, I didn't have a lot of that nerve reconnection. It was mostly just skin, but it's still in the epidermis. There's sections where that numbness took a long time to kind of come back. So there is some nerve stuff going on there, but I didn't have like didn't have like major like nerve, like hand type stuff where everything like where you can't grip something if something is off type of deal. So let me ask you this, you know, what is one of the things you run into, like a misconception or a myth when people come in to see you? Like, is it recovery time? Like what is one of the things where you're really having to find yourself saying to the patient, look, it's not exactly like you see on Grey's Anatomy or ER or whatever it is?
Yeah, I think one of the two things actually. One is there going to be a scar? And anytime you cut on someone, there's going to be a scar. But it's how you like repair that, how you bring the tissues together properly in the same plane. That's going to prevent those problems that you may see in other surgeries, right? Like keloid scarring that's been widened. Putting them together properly and having that skill set to do it the correct way, you're going to have a better scar than no scar, obviously. The other thing is pain. People are like, it's going to be so painful. I'm worried about the post-op recovery process. A lot of that just has to do with you treat it just like you would if you weren't getting cosmetic surgery. You still got to move. You still got to move around. You don't do the heavy lifting, obviously, for the first few weeks. And then you're back at it. And a lot of folks, it depends on themselves, whether they can tolerate some Tylenol and Advil after the surgery and some pain medicine for a few days and they're good, or they might need it a little longer. But everyone's a little different. So.
Yeah, you know, I think that for me, only really the one really bad time I had a surgery on my back and I kind of had a tear, like the stitching, the suturing didn't come in the way it was supposed to come in. Had a little bit of a tear. There was some exposed nerve there. Like, you know, just the skin was open, like it had to heal. It almost had to heal on its own. I couldn't be restitched again.
Yes.
And I have a massive scar from that. But like that was the only time where the pain, because I agree with you. I've had like 13 different surgeries on various things. I'm like Frankenstein's monster underneath all this. And usually a couple days of the pain medication, you know, like that first couple, and then like, do you use like nerve blocks and stuff like that, or is that more for orthopedic?
No, we definitely use nerve blocks. We use lidocaine with epinephrine in the surgery, Marcaine, which is a special kind of cocktail that lasts 12 hours. And sometimes we have something that lasts a little longer, but we use that in everything because we know that first day is going to be the toughest. Yeah.
Man, when I tell you I had shoulder surgery, I had a broke orbital bone in my right shoulder. They went in, repaired it, put a screw, did all this stuff. And the guy said to me, I mean, Dr. Titleman in Atlanta, he said, look, he goes, I gave you a nerve block. You need to start taking your pain medication at about 8 hours after surgery because it's going to wear off at 12. And if you don't start getting the pain medication into your system, when it wears off, you are going to feel it. And I'm like, you know, your shoulder's numb. You're like, it's going to be all right. It's going to be all right. That first night, my ex-wife, I had to sleep in a recliner. I remember just waking up in the middle of the night, like, just felt like my whole body was just kind of like stabbing through it. And I'm like, oh my God, he was right. Like, and then I had to recover from that. Like I had to recoup from that and get in front of the pain. But yeah, that was probably one of the worst ones. So that nerve block thing is amazing.
It does. Especially for more of the cosmetic stuff, it doesn't hurt as bad because you're not doing bones. But when you mess with bones, it's very difficult to block bone pain.
Yeah.
If you do muscles in cosmetics, like when you do a tummy tuck and you tighten up the muscles to bring like pseudo, as we call it, diastasis recti, which is like you think you got a hernia after you have pregnancy and it pops forward. You bring the muscles back together because they've kind of done this. So that's the part that's painful in a tummy tuck. But
That's one I had like that.
Yeah. And not the skin part, because the skin part, that's just like, okay, I feel like there's a cut, but I don't feel like the pain is unbearable.
Well, surgery you're talking about just felt like I had massive muscle cramps in my stomach for like a few days until it almost like you were waiting for it to just go from like this tightened up fist to like a loose hand. Yeah. It was bad. That was a bad one. That was rough.
Yeah. So we numb that though. So if we numb those muscles right there in that fascia where the nerves actually come from the side, and that really prevents that pain. Once you're past the first day or two, you've already got that numbing agent in. Like you said, get ahead of the pain with the pain medicine, the Advil, Tylenol, alternate that 3 to 6 hours. And that's how you're going to get through it. And you're going to be comfortable. Most people are comfortable.
Yeah.
Again, your doctor has to get you a good regimen and make sure you plan for that post-op period properly.
Right. Yeah, and then the other big part of it too is, and I'm sure you guys asked this, is like, what is your post-op plan besides what the protocol is from the surgical side of it? But you need to have resources in place. Like my ex-wife was the best nurse on the planet. Like, look, here's your pill. Shut up. Sit here. Don't move. You're not supposed to move around until 48 hours. Like we had a regimen. Like, I mean, I had multiple surgeries, had a shoulder, an elbow, a whole bunch of stuff. And we just followed, like, this is what the doctor said. Because me, when I'm going into the surgery, I'm kind of like, yeah, it is what, like, my brain doesn't, like, I'm just kind of focused on, I got to go under anesthesia. And she would listen to everything and check everything off and and on post-op, you come out of post-op and everybody's loopy from the anesthesia. She's writing everything down like a champ. So having that plan in place is vitally important from post-op. You do in the facility over here in Wesley Chapel, do you operate out of there, or do you like get space in Advent or Baycare, like one of the hospitals because they're close by?
Yeah, so we operate in our own facility. We have two operating rooms that are certified AAASF, which is basically the operating room is certified at a state and federal level, and it's safe. We have board certified anesthesiologists that do the anesthesia. You know, I'm board certified by the American Board of Surgery. So, you know, it's a completely great environment for the patients to just get it done there and then leave from the same facility.
And then with your schedule, like, what are the days that you cut?
So typically on the Tuesday afternoons, I have time where I do surgeries, and then Wednesdays and Thursdays, depending on what the case supply is for that week for cosmetics.
Gotcha. So we've talked about a lot of the technical and the medical and all that stuff. When you're not in the clinic, when you're not there working, do you live nearby here? What do you do for fun? Your family, your kids? Like, what do you guys do?
Yeah, so I was recently married in May, and so my wife Arushi and I, we like love to go and try different restaurants. You know, I used to play golf a lot. I used to play for high school, and I used to play during college, just a couple of different places. So, you know, I'm trying to get back into golf, but again, starting a new business is difficult. You know, but you know, me and my wife.
Do I cut today, or do I slice do I slice in the operating room, or do I slice on the golf course?
Yeah, no, exactly. So, you know, we enjoy Wesley Chapel. We go downtown to Tampa. We're just exploring since we moved in July, actually, of this year to Wesley Chapel. So
and then whereabouts, not specifically, I don't need your home address, but like what area of Wesley Chapel are you in? Are you up near Saddlebrook, over near Meadow Point? Like whereabouts are you guys situated?
Yeah, so we're right around where our practice is. We actually live in the area. So we live in the Seven Oaks, Northwoods area.
Okay, very good. Yeah, right. I'm very familiar with that area. So, so you talked a little bit about, so you and your wife are foodies. Do you have, so give people listening, besides being a plastic surgeon and a doctor and all that, but what's the last place you guys went to eat? Where was it? What did you have? And how would you rate it?
So we went to an Italian restaurant together named Villaggio's, and it's like an Italian restaurant. It's a little bit further out of Wesley Chapel. It's kind of toward, I think it's Dale Mabry Highway and toward St. Joe's North if you go from Wesley Chapel. And it's a nice, like, it's been there for almost 20 or 30 years, I think. And it's an Italian establishment that is owned by a family that I think recently had sold it off to another family. And it's great. I mean, the Italian food was just bringing me back to like the food I had in West Virginia, because there were also Italian families and Italian restaurants there from when they would immigrate over from New York to West Virginia. And man, they had music playing in there, live music, and this was like on a Thursday.
Like Frank Sinatra and Tony Bennett? What are they playing on the radio?
I don't even, man, I can't even tell you, but it was jazz, and it was just beautiful. And you're like eating Italian food to jazz with your wife. Nothing beats that. So
all right, so I do have to clarify. West Virginia is not known classically for their Italian food.
It's not, but you know, there is a place in West Virginia that if you were to go there, you would be like, wow. I mean,
all right, I'll give it to you.
So
honestly, it's funny. I lived in Atlanta for a long time, and back in the early mid '90s, when I first moved to Atlanta the first time, I found this pizza, because that's the big thing. When you're from the Northeast, like I am, it's like, where can I find pizza? Where can I find bagels? So all my searching in Atlanta, someone said, oh, you got to go try this place. This is 20 something years ago, right? It's a long time ago. And I went in, and it was like a pizzeria that I would have in New Jersey. And I said to him, I said, well, what's the deal? You know, everybody says the water, this is the water, that is the water. And the guy got so mad at me. He goes, I'm so sick of hearing about the water. Either you know how to make pizza or you don't know how to make pizza. A lot of these people in the South just don't know how to make pizza. And he got really mad. But there's a handful of places around. I mean, here, if you like pizza, Amidst in Wesley Chapel is really good.
Okay.
It's right up Wesley Chapel Boulevard, not far from where we are. But the best pizza in all of Florida. And my parents had lived in Florida for 20 years before I moved here. There's a place in Safety Harbor called Nona's Slice House. If you want to take your wife for a day ride, it's about a 45-minute to an hour ride to Safety Harbor. It's right on Main Street. The pizza is phenomenal there. Like that's the only reason I'm willing to go back to Safety Harbor is to go eat pizza at Nona's. It's that good. But so I digress. So so you guys are foodies. You go out and do that stuff. Are you into like are you into the beach or any of that, or is that not?
Yeah, we've been able to go there on a weekend so far. The Honeymoon Beach, which was a great place.
Honeymoon Island.
Yeah, Honeymoon Island.
Yeah.
So we took a trip there, and it was awesome. So
yeah. A hard part with Honeymoon Island is just that one road getting into it, depending on the timing of when you go.
Yeah.
But I had a really great experience on Honeymoon Island one time. It's not safe for the podcast for people to listen to at work. But you and I, when we see each other again, I'll tell you about my experience on Honeymoon Island. It was quite, I don't know. It was fun. It was a fun experience. So Tell me a little bit about, one of the things I like to ask business owners, because a lot of business owners run into this, and it's good to hear other business owners talk about it. What's one of the things, like a challenge that you ran into or a hardship that you faced that you came out the other side of it? I would think building an office in Wesley Chapel in this environment, finding an office in Wesley Chapel is a hardship. What's some of the things that you've run into that you've now got to this point? Like, man, I made it through it. We're in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, the business is ever evolving, right? So like every day there's something. But even from the beginning, I mean, just being prepared for knowing like a year in advance is when we started to build the ground. Before we even had an idea, we had to have the LLC. We had to have the name. We had to have the licenses. And especially in medicine, you got to have more than just a business license. You got to have a medical license to treat patients. You got to have a place that allows you to get medications and drugs to give to patients for surgeries. You got to have clearance. You got to have the Pasco County tax collector know that you're there. You got to have your mailing information correct, right?
You got to have an operation room to be able to.
You got to have a procedure room. You got to have certification. So like all that stuff was a step-by-step thing. But there were times when we had to change the address because the suite number wasn't like going to work, and that was like a pain because then you had to go back to all your paperwork, the hundreds of papers you signed, and or we had a new number we had to put in place because the original one we had to switch over. And so but with that comes the experience of knowing, okay, now the next time we have to expand or build an office or do something, we know what we need to do. So that's what I took out of it. And I'm still going through things, but I'm looking at it from a positive mental attitude, right? I'm just like, I'm going to learn from this. We're going to keep going, go around the obstacles.
Well, that's the big thing, right? Like there's two types of people. There's that fight or flight mentality in people. Some people, come up against it and they go, "Oh God, I just can't do it," and they kind of fold. And those people tend to not stay in business long. They tend to, kind of go back to a corporate job or just kind of just wither away because they can't handle that little bit of adversity. Entrepreneurs and people who have this burning desire to have this business and grow a business and make it successful, though facing that stuff with that positive attitude to be able to work through it, I mean, not to sound, it's going to sound sexist in 2023. That's what separates the men from the boys. That's what separates the grown-ups from the children. The people that come into it, hey, I'm going to take this on. Some of it's going to suck and I have to just kind of roll through it. And if I take it on with a negative attitude, it's only going to make it worse. But if I look at it as, hey, this is an opportunity for me to move forward and get better, people tend to be more successful in that light than they are when they're kind of negative Nelly and everything up and down the road. Yeah. So let me ask you this. I mean, I don't know specifically, like, I know there's a handful of other plastic surgeons in this area. people listening to this, what's the reason they need to come to you?
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. One of the things that I've been known for throughout my career is innovation. I also have 2 biotech companies, and I was a plastic surgeon innovator of the year for the whole national United States American Society of Plastic Surgeons. And because of that, my whole skill set is deemed toward being the most innovative, the most safe plastic surgeon that can do procedures on you. And my whole thought process with that is, well, I'm doing things with machine learning, with AI, to get you the precise measurements and things all the way down to the hands. Like, I can measure the angles on every joint in your hand more accurately than a physical therapist or a physician could, based on our new proprietary technology that's been patented. I'm going to be applying that to all over the body, to the face. So it's symmetry. It's getting the best result that I can possibly give you with adjuncts that I'm able to now use because I've developed them. I work with computer software programmers, healthcare lawyers, and marketers to develop these type of products. So you get the best package of what can be delivered and the most precise, and also with my skill set of having a surgeon background.
So let me ask you this question then. I mean, this is probably the most important question we're going to cover here. With that technology, could you scan my face, take my giant nose that I have, and take Brad Pitt's face and his nose and kind of just map them over each other so that now I have Brad Pitt's nose?
It's not ready for facial analysis yet, but that is something that can happen with it. I mean, the way we use this technology is we look at different images that people have uploaded, for instance, of the hands, thousands and thousands and thousands, and it accurately gives you what the average angles are, what the average angle of this is, and that is, and this population and that population. So yes, it can do that. And that's something we should look into.
Listen, I'm ready. So this is like Nicolas Cage and John Travolta Face Off. This is kind of that thing. I could walk into the Rotary Club and be like, wow, Brad Pitt is here. And it's just going to be me with a new face on. I'm just going to do Face Off type thing. That is next level stuff. What is the way that we get a hold of you? Where can we go? What website, phone number, email, Raven? How do people get a hold of you?
Yeah, so our office is in Wesley Chapel. It's on Cypress Ridge Boulevard. So the exact address is 2441 Oak Myrtle Lane, Suite 102, Wesley Chapel. And that's in Florida, and it's 33544. Our number is 813-708-1408. And you can see and learn more about Dr. Viradia, which is me, in plastic surgery, and all the procedures we do at ViradiaPlasticSurgery.com. And Viradia is spelled Viradia.
So guys, if you're listening to this and you're in Wesley Chapel, and you don't need to be in Wesley Chapel. I mean, if you are in Lutz or Land O'Lakes or Zephyr Hills or New Tampa, and you're in that proximity to the office, there are not a lot of great plastic surgeons in this area. So moms, if you're listening to this and you have that little pouch that you've been trying to get off your body for the past year and a half, and your husband is saying to you, what's going on? And you want to get that fixed. Or husbands, if you're out there and you have some extra skin hanging, or, you need to get something done, go and see Viradia Plastic Surgery. Dr. Ravi is in town. He's been here. He's ready to be a part of the community here in Wesley Chapel. Reach out, ViradiaPlasticSurgery.com or 813-708-1408. Doc, thank you so much for being a good neighbor, and thank you so much for being on the Good Neighbor podcast. You have an amazing day.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me, and I'm happy to be a part of this community in North Tampa. And let's see if we can make some magic happen.
We will see you around for sure. I have a feeling I'm going to run into you. I got some stuff I need. I need my plastic surgery fix.
All right, we'll be here for you.
Thanks for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Passcode. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnppasco.com. That's gnppasco.com, or call 813-922-3610.